God has shown in His Bible His approval with those who follow His will and His displeasure and wrath with those who refuse to worship Him the way that He has directed. God has always been very clear about how He is to be worshiped, but unfortunately, man has refused to listen. An example of acceptable and unacceptable worship in the Old Testament is in that of Cain and Abel. Cain and Abel both worshiped God. Abel worshiped him as God had directed, but Cain tried to worship God in the way that he wanted to worship God. We read in Genesis 4:3-5. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of fruit of the ground to the Lord. Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. And the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but He did not respect Cain and his offering. But why did the Lord have respect for Abel's offering, and why did He reject Cain's offering? Hebrews 11 verse 4 tells us, by faith Abel offered to God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain. Well, notice what happened. Abel offered his sacrifice by faith, but Cain did not. Hebrews 10:17 says, so then faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. So faith comes by the word of God. Abel offered his sacrifice by faith. Or we can put it another way. Abel offered his sacrifice according to the Word of God. If we worship God by faith, then we worship God as He has directed us to do. Abel offered the firstborn of his flock by faith, and it was accepted because his worship was according to the instructions of God. But Cain chose to ignore God's instructions and sacrificed an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. Cain chose to sacrifice to God the way he saw fit. Cain did not offer his sacrifice according to God's instructions, so God rejected his sacrifice and his worship since it was not by faith. Now, from this example, we see that our worship must be by faith, that is, by the Word of God. We read in Romans 14:23, for whatever is not from faith is sin. If our worship, friends, is not by faith, that is, it is not by the Word of God, then it is sinful. It will also be rejected just like Cain's worship was rejected. And it is a very serious matter if God rejects our worship. If He does, then we're going to be lost. And many people accept from the Bible what they like, and they reject what they don't like. They also add other things that they like. Friends, this is not Christianity, but is religious anarchy. We do not have the right to believe as we please. We must humbly submit ourselves to all that Jesus says. And anything that is taught or practiced by man in the field of religion which does not come from the Bible, friends, this is false doctrine and must be rejected. One cannot obey God without doing what God says to do. When God says to do it, and how God says to do it, but also for the reason God says to do it. If what we do in worship is not according to the Word of God, then it is vain and useless and will cause us to be lost for all of eternity. Friends, we want to thank you for joining us for our program today. We hope that you will be able to join us again next week as we continue our study of worshiping God in spirit and in truth. And we hope that God blesses you with a wonderful day today and a blessed weekend ahead.